This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Consult with a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Welcome to the Wire Weekly Roundup. The week in real estate presented in digestible bites. Hold on while our AI hosts take us on another ride through this week's top real estate headlines.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. If you're tuning in, you probably share our fascination with the constantly moving target that is the real estate market.
Definitely.
Today, we've got quite a collection of recent reports and data points we really want to unpack. Think of it as, your condensed guide to what's really happening out there.
Yeah, we've sifted through quite a bit. Redfin numbers, builder sentiment, price trends.
And even, this is interesting, a look at how legalized marijuana is maybe starting to interact with the property market.
Right. Surprising angle.
So our goal today, basically boil it all down, give you a clear view of the current situation, and maybe, just maybe, a better feel for what might be coming down the pike.
Okay, let's jump in.
Right.
So looking across all these different sources, one big theme jumps out pretty quickly. The really frantic pace we saw in real estate, it's definitely slowing down, moderating.
Yeah, the signals are pretty consistent there, aren't they?
They really are.
Like Redfin's data for the 4 weeks ending around mid-April, homes are just sitting longer. Median time on market, 41 days. That's 5 days longer than this time last year. And get this, for homes going under contract in March, it stretched to 47 days.
Wow, 47 days.
Yeah, that's the longest for March since, before the pandemic craziness started. That feels like a real shift in the tempo, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. That extra time, it directly tells you buyers aren't feeling that same intense pressure, that urgency.
Yeah.
And Redfin also mentioned, pending sales are down just a bit year over year. And their agents, they're saying buyers are, more picky, more selective.
Taking their time more.
Exactly. It's just a different feel than the bidding wars we got used to.
And it's not only buyer behavior, right? The mortgage side reflects this cooling too. We saw mortgage purchase applications drop, 5% week over week in one report. Now, granted, they're still up compared to last year at this time.
Yeah, important context.
But that recent dip, it definitely adds to this overall picture of maybe the market finding a new balance point.
And what's really feeding into this, I think, is the supply side.
Inventory.
Yeah, we're seeing a pretty big jump in the number of homes actually hitting the market. New listings are up over 11% compared to last year.
11%.
And total active listings up over 12%, actually hit a 5-year high back in March.
Wow. So more houses available and maybe slightly less frantic demand?
Exactly. It naturally cools things down a bit. It has to.
And you can see that effect directly in prices, can't you? That rapid price growth seems to be easing off.
For sure. The median sale price increase for that same early April period, it slowed down to just 2.6% year over year.
Only 2.6%. That's way down from the 5, even 6% growth we were seeing at the start of this year, 2025.
Big difference. So those really steep price climbs definitely seem to be flattening out, at least nationally.
Okay, but digging into why people are selling, there was an interesting survey insight there too, right? About rate expectations.
Yeah, that was quite revealing. It looks like a good chunk of sellers, something like 43% of those who think mortgage rates are going to go up. They actually say that expectation makes them more likely to sell now.
Oh, interesting. So they're thinking sell now before rates go higher and maybe buyers pull back.
Seems like it. It suggests they're trying to, lock in current conditions before things potentially get tougher for buyers. It's a strategic move.
Yeah, less panic, more proactive planning based on the economic tea leaves.
Yeah.
Okay, so the big picture nationally points towards cooling. Slower pace, more inventory, easing price growth.
Right.
But as we always say on the show, national averages hide a lot, don't they? Real estate is so local.
Always. Always local. And this is where you start seeing the real divergences. Take builder confidence, for example.
Okay.
Huge regional differences. The Northeast, builders seem pretty optimistic, relatively speaking. But out West, much less confidence.
And builder sentiment often leads the market a bit.
Yeah.
Right. Reflects their view on future demand.
Exactly. So that regional split in confidence is telling.
And does that line up with what we're seeing in actual home price movements in different cities?
It seems to, yeah. One analysis showed that even while national price growth is slowing overall, quite a few metro areas are actually seeing prices drop year over year.
Drop. Okay, where are we seeing that?
Well, Florida had a surprisingly large number of those metros with price declines, at least as of February data.
Florida. Interesting. Maybe some of those really hot markets are correcting a bit.
Could be. Places that saw massive appreciation during the pandemic might be adjusting more sharply now. Really highlights how different things can be from one place to another.
But then you mentioned the Northeast builder confidence.
Yeah.
Are prices holding up better there?
It looks like it. The Northeast is still showing above average price growth generally. Like Rochester, New York, for instance, saw a pretty strong 7.5% year-over-year jump.
Wow, 7.5%. So definitely not a uniform slowdown everywhere.
Not at all. And that Redfin data for early April, it gives an even finer grained view. You see big price increases in places like Newark and New Brunswick and New Jersey.
Yeah.
But at the same time, price decreases in Florida metros like Jacksonville and Orlando, and even some Texas spots like San Antonio and Austin.
So increases in Jersey, decreases in parts of Florida and Texas. It really is a patchwork quilt out there.
Exactly, patchwork.
So the takeaway is, know the national trend for context, but your real focus has to be super local. What's happening block by block almost.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about the wider economy. Specifically, tariffs seem to be causing some ripples.
Yeah, that economic uncertainty and definitely the tariff talk seems to be making people cautious, both buyers and builders, actually.
How so? What are we seeing?
Well, Redfin had survey data suggesting nearly a quarter of Americans.
A quarter. It's a lot.
Yeah, almost 25%. So they'd scrapped plans for big purchases like homes or cars, specifically because of tariff worries. That's a potential hit to demand right there.
Yeah. And you mentioned builders too.
Right. We saw housing starts for single-family homes dip pretty sharply in March compared to February. Building permits were down too.
So less new construction starting up. Is that directly linked to tariffs, you think? Or just general uncertainty?
Probably a mix, but tariffs definitely play a role. Even if some get paused, the threat of higher material costs makes builders nervous, understandably. They might hold off breaking ground.
Makes sense. And didn't another survey, even before the latest tariff news, show sellers were already sensitive about interest rates?
Exactly. Realtor.com found that back in March. So you had existing sensitivity to rates, and then you layer on the tariff announcements in April. It likely just amplified those worries, that general sense of economic, uh-oh.
Yeah, feels like one feeds the other, right? Uncertainty makes buyers pause, which makes builders pause, which could eventually impact supply. A bit of a cycle.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. Now, for something a bit different, we stumbled on some really interesting stuff about legalized marijuana and real estate. Didn't expect that connection to be so documented.
Me neither, but it's fascinating. The National Association of Realtors did a survey, this was March 2025, looking into it.
And what did they find?
Well, on the commercial side, in states where recreational marijuana is legal, almost half of the commercial real estate folks reported seeing more demand for space.
What kind of space?
Mostly warehouses and storefronts, as you might guess. And interestingly, that demand seems to grow the longer legalization has been in place. The industry matures, needs more space.
Okay. That makes sense for commercial. Warehouses for growing, storefronts for selling. But what about residential? Does having a dispensary nearby hurt home values? That's the common fear, isn't it?
It is a common fear, but the survey, surprisingly, mostly found no real noticeable change in residential property values near dispensaries.
Really? So not the negative impact some might expect.
Apparently not, based on this survey.
Yep.
However, what is changing is rules within communities.
Like HOA rules.
Exactly. The longer recreational use has been legal, the more likely HOAs are to add rules restricting smoking or growing in common areas. Same goes for rentals. More property managers are adding lease clauses about not growing or restricting smoking inside.
So the market value impact might be minimal, but the day-to-day living rules are definitely adapting.
Seems that way.
And what about selling a house that was, used for growing? A grow house.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be tricky.
You'd think so, right. But again, surprisingly, most agents who'd sold one said it wasn't hard to sell.
Huh.
Yeah, and even more interesting, agents in states where legalization was more recent reported the less difficulty selling them.
Maybe suggesting it's becoming more normalized, less of a stigma as time goes on.
That could be it. Growing acceptance, perhaps.
And one last thing on this. What about crime? the other common concern.
Right. The survey found that the perception of increased crime near dispensaries was actually way more common than actual increases reported by the commercial members working right there.
So perception versus reality gap, important distinctions.
Very important. Rely on the data, not just assumptions.
Okay, wow. We've covered a ton of ground. The national cooling, the crucial regional differences, the economic headwinds like tariffs, and this budding influence of marijuana legalization.
Quite a mix.
So if you had to boil it down, what's the absolute key takeaway for our listeners, the real estate pros and enthusiasts tuning in?
I think the main thing is recognizing we're clearly in a period of transition. That phase of just rapid, almost universal price growth, that seems to be over.
Okay.
We're moving into a market where buyers are starting to get a bit more breathing room, a little more leverage, mainly because inventory is finally ticking up and demand isn't quite as intense.
But it's not happening the same way everywhere.
Absolutely critical point. This is not a uniform nationwide shift hitting every town equally.
So the mantra really has to be hyperlocal, hyperlocal, hyperlocal.
Exactly. You have to know your specific market inside and out. Track that local inventory. Watch the days on market stats for your area. Understand the neighborhood price trends. What's happening 3 towns over might be totally different.
And for folks advising sellers right now, what's the message?
Manage expectations. Be realistic. Sellers need to understand they likely need to price competitively from the start and be prepared to negotiate. Those days of just listing and expecting multiple offers way over asking, they're fading in many, many places.
Makes sense. And flipping to the buyer side with rates bouncing around and economic uncertainty still lingering.
Education is key. Buyers need help stress testing their budgets. What if rates go up another half point, a full point? Can they still afford it comfortably?
And we saw some buyers considering adjustable rate mortgages, right? ARMs.
Yeah, that suggests buyers are adapting to the rate environment, looking for ways to make payments work. But it's crucial they fully understand the risks involved with ARMs, how their payments could change down the line.
Good point. And then there are these other factors, like the marijuana impact we discussed. Pros need to be aware of that too, especially in commercial or property management.
For sure. Understanding the demand for certain commercial spaces or navigating new HOA rules or lease addendums related to cannabis, these are becoming part of the landscape in more places. It's another layer of local knowledge needed.
Plus, just keeping a really close eye on the broader economy, right? Tariffs, inflation, job numbers.
Absolutely. All those big economic indicators will keep shaping consumer confidence and ultimately the housing market. Stay informed on that front too.
Okay, so summing it up. A market finding a new pace, huge regional variations demanding local expertise, realistic advice for sellers, careful planning for buyers, and awareness of both economic pressures and new legal influences.
That captures it pretty well, I think.
All right. Well, for all of you listening, we really hope this deep dive gave you some valuable perspective to chew on. What are you seeing out there in your own backyards? What trends are standing out to you?
Yeah, we'd love to hear.
Definitely keep watching, keep analyzing, and, adjust your strategies as needed. The market waits for no one. Until our next deep dive, stay informed and stay ahead.
If you're interested in your own personalized edition of The Wire, please visit us at thewire.fm/custom. We offer market-specific podcasts with all the latest real estate news and market analysis delivered to you weekly or monthly. Own your market with a personalized edition of The Wire, The Week in Real Estate. Thank you for listening.